Hey guys, today we're going to be painting a turtle in gouache. And this is a type of paint that's a bit thicker than watercolor, but thinner than acrylic. So we can still have watercolor effects, but we can add highlights later in the process and make really nice gradients, shifts from one color to another. It's my favorite type of paint to work with as it dries very quickly, but it can be reworked just by adding more water. I'm using a reference photo from DeviantArt that I will link to in the description, so you can try to do the same painting if you want to. I'm commenting on a sped up version of myself painting, and I will be watching it with you. And I decided to do it this way to make it shorter, to make the video shorter, and give you a bunch of info in a small amount of time, and not make you sit and wait for an hour to see everything. And I have sketched the outline of the turtle beforehand on my piece of paper with a light pencil. And this will be covered with the layers and layers of paint as we move along in the process. So the first thing that I do is that I add a thin layer of water onto the paper, avoid the edges, and then I'm adding a thin layer of paint, a lot of water, very little paint. The color that I pick is the general color of that area. So the rock on the right is brown and the grass is green and so on. Then I will outline the turtle, its shell and its feet, I guess that's what they're called, and its head. So this is also not that much paint, mostly water. These lines will be blended in with the colors that I add on top of them later. So now I'm thickening the lines, adding more brown into the shadows. Here you can see I'm using a bit more paint, less water, to just indicate what are the dark areas. I will mix in blue with brown to make the shadows seem kind of more deep. I don't use black on its own. I think it's generally a bad idea to use black with gouache because it blends really badly with the other colors. So now I'm adding some yellow and blending it in with the brown that was already on the paper just by using a brush that has a lot of water. So now I'm going to be adding a few highlights to the shell, blending it in, putting a bit of yellow into the beak because it's lighter than the rest of the turtle's head. Now I'm gonna blend the blue and the yellow together just by adding more water to the blue because it's a strong pigment, so I don't need a lot of color there, a lot of extra color. Put the brown onto the paw, it will dry, and now I'll outline the shell with blue. And blue and this warm yellow are complementary colors, so this is gonna look quite nice. Now I'm gonna blend in the blue into the yellow with a thin brush. I find that when you're blending darker colors into the light colors, it's good to use a sort of thin, dry brush. Now I'm doing the scales on the foot with this mixture of gray and beige, adding a bit white. Now I'm using a flat, thin, small brush to do shadows under the scales with the mixture of brown and blue that I already made, adding more brown to it, and trying to just add more details into the shadows, which can make a big difference in the painting when you have details in the dark parts where you can almost not see that much. And a big shadow under our turtle. Now I'm doing a highlight on the place where the turtle's skin folds. We have a darker shade on the right and the lighter shade on the left that looks like the left part is sort of going over the right part. And now I'm adding some brown and some white onto its beak to make the transition between the yellow and the blue color, to not make it green if we mix it directly. The eye is a mix of brown and black, and I'm adding little dots of green to show that our turtle is outside and the outside environment is sort of reflecting in its eyes. I will work a bit on the shell by adding more gray and white onto the upper right corners of each, or some of the shell parts, because our light source is kind of in the upper right corner, so we want that part to be a bit lighter than the lower left. So that's how we're gonna do it. Now some highlights in the turtle's shell, and I'm gonna paint the foot, but then I'm gonna paint it over later as I do the bottom, the grass stuff. Now I'm painting the grass, and I'm gonna do a lot of work with that. I'm gonna keep adding colors and blending and layering and trying to get the texture right. Now my camera turned off there for a sec, so we skipped a bit of grass, but it wasn't way too exciting. I just added some grass in the background with a big flat brush that was kind of dryish, just by stroking it upwards. When I'm blending the grass, I'm going from right to left, and then I'm gonna take another round brush that's smaller and sort of tap onto it to make the texture a little bit more interesting than just, you know, a simple line from right to left. I'm adding some beige and some brown to make tiny pebbles and rocks, because this is a baby turtle, so it's pretty small. And I'm using I used a bit of time on the grass, and I think it's important to spend a bit of time on your background, so it's not just one stroke of one color, so you have a bit of details everywhere to make the painting a bit more homogeneous. So the stone got a bunch of brown, there's a lot of water, a lot of beige and yellow mixed into it to make it more interesting, and I'm kind of blending it into the grass on the left side, so the transition keeps being smooth. Now I'm adding brown into the very edge of the turtle shell now that the yellow has dried, and making the shadows on its foot and the claws a little bit more visible to make it pop up again. So it won't sort of blend into the shadow of the neck. I'm adding more dark on the neck, more dark shades on the neck side, and lighter highlights on the foot side to make them separate from each other. So now I'm just doing basically adjusting what I've done already with making highlights and outlines. I'm gonna do some strong blue outlines on the shell, and I'm not gonna mix them or blend them into the colors underneath to make it stand out more and give more contrast to the painting. You can see I'm doing sort of lines with a round brush, and then I'm making little dots in the lower left corners, which is the shadow of it. So yeah, this will stand out a bit more and look kind of more interesting than just like a very naturalistic painting. There, the foot came out of nowhere. I think my camera skipped a beat there as well. I'm still reworking the shadow, and this is what is great about gouache. You can make one thing and then just rework it and keep reworking this area over and over again. We're closing to finish. I'm just adding some dots and doing the final outline of the turtle, and we are pretty much done. This is how it looks.